Hey guys, want to break down another discovery call following the webinar. Talked to a PT with 1 to 2 years of experience. Just like you, frustrated, already knows that the mental model is broken and he's trying to do some things on his own. So I'm going to talk about that, break that down for you. And at the end of this video, give you a little piece of information just in case you're somebody who wasn't on the webinar, you missed it, but you want that information. So you want to know what they didn't teach you in school and why that's limiting your outcomes and killing your career. So make sure you stay to the end of this video for that information. So let's talk about this guy who's already got rid of a lot of the conventional medical model, PT stuff, and he's now saying, well, I've figured out that I can just do exercise. And he liked the webinar because we talked about functional screen and how functional screen can lead right into what you should be looking at, and what you should be looking at is going to lead right into what you're going to be prescribing exercise-wise. So I asked him, okay, so do you understand that when we talked about physiology in the webinar, that the stuff that you got rid of doesn't apply neuromuscular physiology in the clinic? That's why people fail with conventional PT. That's one of the things they don't teach you in school. And what you're doing doesn't apply neuromuscular physiology. So you're skipping the most important part, which is getting to the root cause of what's going on. And he said, well, but I'm getting good results. And I said, okay, so fantastic thing is, and then we covered this on the webinar too, is that a lot of people before they get in the shift and before they become 180 practitioners have already figured out, if I get rid of stretching, foam rolling, theragunning, needling, cupping, soft tissue crap, my patients are already better. And if I tell them to stop doing that stuff at home, stop stretching, stop wearing orthotics, stop the theragun, stop doing all that stuff at home, they're already better. Okay, so fantastic. So what I told them was, so you realize if your patients came in and you just sat them down in a chair and had a conversation, they'd be better than if you did a regular PT visit. And he said, yeah. And I said, so you're adding exercise on top of that. So I said, remember, we talked about physiology in the webinar. And if you have neuromuscular inhibition, which is the root cause of dysfunction and pain and symptoms, if you have that, you cannot reverse that by doing eccentric and concentric exercise. And he said, well, yeah. I said, okay, so there's one problem. And so I said, so give me an example of a patient that you are seeing that you are just getting rid of the conventional stuff and just replacing that with exercise. Tell me what that looks like. So he said, okay, I've got somebody coming in with gluteus medius tendinopathy. So what I'm doing with them is gluteus medius exercises. I said, okay, fantastic. So we talked about the law of reciprocal inhibition in the webinar. How are you, and I specifically said in the webinar, if you've got patients with lower extremity issues, you must be able to apply the law of reciprocal inhibition. Okay, so they're resisting gravity, they're in a closed chain environment when they have their symptoms, which tells you, you better be assessing the antagonist. And he said, well, I'm not really doing that. And I said, so tell me what your exercises for this patient would be. He said, well, I do like hip abduction, band work, blah, 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 that stuff. I said, okay, so you're prescribing them exercises for the body part that hurts. And he said, correct. I said, okay, so how is that different than any personal trainer out there, any chiropractor out there, any athletic trainer out there, any conventional PT out there? They're doing the exact same thing. They're just adding other crap on top of it. So if you just have the patient say, where does it hurt? And you give them exercises, you're no better than the massage therapist that says, where does it hurt? And rubs them down on that spot, especially if it's a lower extremity issue. So, and then I said, so what happens if you give them those exercises and they don't get better or symptoms flare up? Well, then I have to modify the exercise. Okay. If you're modifying exercises around symptoms, you're teaching people how to train around symptoms, that means you're avoiding the root cause. That's why symptoms are still there. So you can modify things as much as you want till you finally make them comfortable doing, instead of doing a full squat, they're only doing a quarter squat. And instead of having 50 pounds of weight, they have no weight. And instead of doing 15 reps, they only do 2 reps. So you've got somebody doing a quarter squat with body weight for 2 reps. Is that progress? No, especially when that person is an athlete who wants to run or do triathlons or play tennis or play football or whatever. You have not solved their problem. All you did was dance around their symptoms, okay? So I said, okay, so there's one limitation. You're not assessing what you need to get to. So here's the other problem. Just because they have gluteus medius tendinopathy doesn't mean gluteus medius is the only problem. So when I went through our case study in the webinar, I said, these are the things that I treated on this patient. So the patient was a sciatica patient with low back pain. I didn't only treat one muscle. I treated quads, several hamstrings, several glutes, soleus, several trunk, abdominal, core muscles. So never, I guarantee you this, never will you have a patient come into your clinic with gluteus medius tendinopathy or a gluteus medius gait or a Trendelenburg gait or whatever, and gluteus medius only is the problem. Won't ever happen. So if you're only, let's say that he was actually able to reverse inhibition by doing the exercises, eccentric and concentric exercises that he was doing. Let's pretend that would actually work. It still wouldn't work because gluteus medius, I guarantee you, is not the only muscle that's inhibited. They've figured out how to compensate. Once they compensate, those muscles they compensate with eventually get inhibited. Then they have to figure out how to compensate around that. Then those muscles get inhibited. So this is the snowball effect that your patients have. So if I've got a patient coming in that's already tried chiropractor, massage, PT, they've had this problem for 6 to 9 months to over a year, I know that they have a whole bunch of compensations going on just so they can function and do what they're trying to do. I have to go break down all of those compensations, and the only way I can do that is to assess every single muscle, which is what I talked about in the webinar. If you're not assessing everything, you're not assessing anything. So if you are assessing gluteus medius, you not only have to do that, you have to assess anterior head of gluteus medius, middle head of gluteus medius, posterior head of gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, anterior and posterior head, TFL, vastus lateralis, 2 heads, semitendinosus, semimembranosus, probably bicep fem, short and long head. So if you don't know how to break every single muscle down and assess all of those muscles for neuromuscular function, not strength, which is what we covered in the webinar, that is why you are not succeeding. And remember, succeeding means when your patient comes in not able to do things and has pain, when they leave from that visit, not 2 to 3 visits for 6 to 8 weeks to feel a little bit better. After one visit, they can do what they couldn't do when they walked in, and they have no symptoms. They have normal range of motion. They have normal facilitation. They have normal strength. They have normal stability after a visit. So when you're getting to root cause, which the only way you can do that is to do the functional screen, figure out what you see they can't do, let them feel what they can't do, then break every muscle down, assess for inhibition, reverse inhibition when it's there, then go through all of that. Don't just do 1 or 2 muscles. You have to go through the entire body. So remember, in the webinar with this low back pain and sciatica patient, what was the first thing I assessed on the table for neuromuscular function? Lats and traps. You don't just go to low back and sciatica. That's the last thing you should do, which is what we covered in the webinar. So notice I keep on saying we covered that in the webinar. So make sure you stay to the end of this video for more information about that. So you see where the holes are in this thought process. So we have a PT that went through PT school, was only taught what they teach you in PT school, so he didn't learn how to assess function with a functional screen in less than a minute, total body. He did not learn how to apply neuromuscular physiology. He did not learn critical thinking. He did not learn root cause analysis. So all of those holes in his thought process have made him frustrated. So he said, okay, I already know that all of this symptom modification stuff is BS, so he got rid of that, fantastic. But he did not fill the holes into his thought process and his treatment strategies. So now the only thing that he's left with is exercise. So now he's taken himself to somebody who went through 7 years of college to become a doctor, to rack up $250,000 in student loans and debt to become an average personal trainer. That doesn't make sense. So what he's going to do is bang his head against the wall until he figures out this stuff just giving people exercises is not working. So, as I stated in the webinar, you can go that route and you can bang your head against the wall for 2 to 5 years, which most people will just say screw it and give up and go do something else. That's why most PTs burn out and give up on the profession somewhere around the 2 to 3 year mark. Or you can have somebody teach you all of the stuff that you didn't learn that took them 2 to 4 years to figure out. So it took me 2 to 4 years after school to finally put all of the pieces of the 180 system together and make it work. So you can go down the road that I went down all by yourself with no mentor, reading textbooks, reading research, playing around things, trying to get things to work, going and taking every CEU course out there and trying to glue pieces together. So you can drive yourself crazy and do that for 2 to 5 years and you'll most likely fail, burn out and go do something else. Or you can hire me to teach you how to do all of that stuff in less than 4 months. It's up to you. I think the choice is really easy. 4 months versus 2 to 5 years. And as I talked about on the previous video, if you hire me to teach you how to do that stuff, you're investing in your career and you're going to make that money back in less than a year. So you have 3 payment options for the shift. You can pay as little as $1,400 for the shift and in less than a year, make all of that money back. So that's why it's an investment, whereas if you do a residency or you take CEUs or you try to get more experience, whatever money you spend there, you're wasting because you still didn't figure out what the holes are in your skill set and your thought processes and your treatment strategies, which is why it won't work, which is why that is wasting money. All right, so here's what I told you to stay for the end of the video for. So if you were in the video, if you were registered for the webinar, and you weren't able to get there, so I got emails from a couple of you saying, hey, I can't make it, but I am registered. Check your email right now. You should have a link to the full webinar. You have a link to the little exercise that we did before the webinar. You have the full hour-long webinar, including the question and answer session. Go watch that. And if you've got questions, hit me up with questions. If you're ready to register for the shift, hit me up and I'll send you the link, okay? Actually, I'll put the link down here. So make sure you check your email right now. If you were registered for the webinar, get in there. As I mentioned at the end of the webinar, lab seats are filling up. So lab weekend is in February. The next one is in March. Both of those are filling up. That's why I'm only sending this information out to the people who were registered for the webinar. So you can take those seats. Now, if you didn't get registered for the webinar and you're watching this on Facebook, you're watching this on YouTube, come back a day or two from now and the link will be live. Or just pay attention on Instagram, I'm gonna make that link live. But I want to give priority to fill those lab weekend seats in February and March to the people that registered for the webinar and weren't able to make it. So go check your email now. If you didn't register for the webinar, pay attention to Instagram and also the Facebook group. I'll release that link so you guys can watch that, and then you can take what seats are left for lab weekend after those people have already had the chance. So I'll talk to you soon. If you got questions or comments, make sure you post them below.